Hi, man, peace. So it appears as if our favorite Luciferian warlock, Jay-Z, is back in the news again. As we all know, he recently made news with the recent release of a music video with his wife, Beyonce. But in addition to that, Puma, which is a major sports apparel brand located in Germany, has decided to name Jay-Z their creative consultant in an attempt to bring their company back more into the mainstream in regards to its associations with the major sports here in America. So, of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Collins ahead of this week's NBA draft on Thursday, which you can catch on ESPN. Puma is stealing headlines. The company announcing that rapper and business mogul Jay-Z will join Puma as their creative director. This, one of the several moves the company is doing to get back into the basketball world.
Hey, brothers, remember about 15 years ago when Jay-Z came out with that whack-ass sneaker with Reebok? And niggas was running out to get it just because his name was associated with it. Jay-Z is a puppet. He's just a top-level puppet. That's all he is. They try to put him in these allegedly prominent positions. They give him these flattering titles talking about creative consultant. All that is a fancy term for mascot. Remember when they tried to allege that he was part owner of the Brooklyn Nets, and then eventually it was revealed that he only owned about 0.001% of the team, and it was basically his job to sit at half court, or pardon me, with front court seats with his wife Beyonce, so that he could bring attention to the team and hopefully raise the value of the team. That's what they do with Jay-Z. They give him creative credit for things that he has nothing to do with. They just want him to act as some type of magnet for the so-called black man, to see him and say, oh wow, Jay-Z's really doing it big. Let me buy this product so that I can quote-unquote support a black man. I doubt that he's going to have much to do with anything creative with the Puma brand. His job is hopefully to attract a lot of high-profile athletic prospects who also happen to be black. That is Jay-Z's job.
Which include offering multi-year shoe deals to at least 6 projected first-round picks, such as DeAndre Ayton, the projected #1 pick in this year's draft, who signed a 4-year, multi-million-dollar footwear and apparel endorsement deal with the company. This comes after Marvin Bagley III signed a 5-year deal with Puma, valued in the $2 to $3 million range per year. The former Duke freshman is currently projected as the 5th best prospect in the 2018 NBA draft class by ESPN scouting analyst Jonathan Givony. Let's get you back to First Take.
And oh, by the way, before they start this conversation, how many of you brothers out there know that both Puma and Adidas were started by Nazis? Puma was started by a former Nazi by the name of Rudolf Dassler. And Adidas was started by his younger brother, who was named Adolf Dassler. That's where we get the term Adidas from. Adolf, the younger brother of Rudolf Dassler, had a pet named Adi. So when he formed his sneaker company, he took his first name abbreviation of Adi and then combined it with an abbreviation of his last name. Instead of Dassler, Das, so Adidas. But once again, yes, both Puma and Adidas are companies that were founded by Nazis. Isn't that interesting? And also, isn't it amazing that no one has dug up any of this information and publicized it, at least not to my knowledge? Because I'd never heard of it until I recently stumbled upon it. And beyond that, one would think that if both of those multi-billion-dollar corporations / companies were founded by former Nazis, how come they have not been made privy to an inquisition by many of these more militant Jewish leagues, who are always looking to see whose files they can rifle through to see which companies were started by profiteering off of the so-called Holocaust?
I'm loving this. It's major people. Jay-Z, the new creative director of Puma, and they are going hard in the NBA space, signing projected top 5 picks DeAndre Ayton and Marvin Bagley III. Max, what impact will Jay-Z have on the NBA?
Well, it's very interesting that Jay-Z is going to take on this supposedly dual role, because allegedly he's the head of Roc Nation Sports, which is supposed to be a management company. Now you're telling me that he's going to be the creative consultant for Puma. So there should be what is considered a conflict of interest, because if he's going to be representing, or his company is going to be representing clients in the NBA, and then on top of that, he's going to act as a creative consultant for Puma, one would think that, well, you know, these two things are not going to jive together. But I don't think that Jay-Z is going to have that major of an effect, because it's basically just going to be for face placement. he's someone recognizable that Puma is hoping is going to court many of the young black male athletes that are going to be generating millions, if not billions of dollars for the NBA over the next 10 years. They're hoping that by face recognition, he could bring them over to Puma. But I don't think that he's going to have that big of an effect. I don't see anyone taking down Nike.
He's going to have a huge impact, and this is an enormous move for Puma and the NBA. I think it indicates that
you're a fanboy. If Jay-Z did not have a major effect on Reebok and they gave him his own signature shoe at a time when he was the hottest rapper on the planet Earth back in 2003, I would say that still at that time, even though he had just gone through getting his ass whooped by Nas with the whole Ether song and they were trying to promote Eminem, I still believe that Jay-Z in 2002, 2003, whatever time period that was when he first got his signature shoe through Reebok, he was pretty much recognized as the biggest bigwig in hip-hop at that time. And he was unable to make that signature shoe transcend over into the NBA or make Reebok any more appealing for prospective professional athletes. So I don't see him doing that for Puma either. But I mean, we'll find out.
Obviously, hip-hop culture and sneaker culture, for what it's worth, give me a better word, are intertwined, as is the culture of the NBA. I remember as a kid, 5th grade, Stephen, I was 10 years old, Beat Street came out. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
Right, it still holds up. Anyway, Beat Street comes out, and they had a deal, obviously, with Puma.
There go Jay-Z and Beyonce when they were acting as mascots. Let me rewind it back just a little bit.
Puma. Anyway, Beat Street comes...
I remember this time period so vividly because supposedly Jay-Z was quote-unquote part owner of the Brooklyn Nets, when the fact of the matter was he was just being offered such a minute share of the team that it could barely be recognized as a minority share, and he was only offered that in return for he and his wife sitting along the sideline and allegedly being sat there to try to convey this image that Brooklyn was where it was at and they had the biggest stars or what have you. And it all ended up being a big sham. Remember, Usher also had the same deal with the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Comes out, and they had a deal, obviously, with...
Nelly also has the same deal with the Charlotte Hornets.
Puma. All you saw everywhere was Puma. And at the time, the three sneakers, really the three brands that held sway, certainly in hip-hop culture, were Puma and Adidas and Nike.
Well, coming up right behind them were also Ponies and British Knights.
But a funny thing happened since then. Adidas and Nike stayed in the athletic business, right? In the sneaker basketball business. Puma, not so much. Puma became more of a lifestyle brand.
Max Kellerman, you're supposed to be a so-called Caucasian Jew. How come you don't know that Puma and Adidas had founders that were Nazis? How come you don't know that, sir?
And Jay-Z, therefore, is an excellent pick to steer, if not represent, that brand.
It's so interesting to me that it never resonates with the average observer that Jay-Z had his peak, his apex, from the late 90s to the early 2000s as a rapper. But all of a sudden, since about 2004, he's become this worldwide megastar, as his career has actually declined. That shows you the power of Luciferianism. And please notice in the lower left-hand corner of the screen, they show Jay-Z there with the all black on. He is a Saturnian. And it's so clear and obvious to most people. Now, he's one of the people that is very hard to dispute, even amongst casual observers, that he's not a Luciferian. It's very, very obvious in regards to he and his wife, what they're actually into. They will almost overtly praise the Baphomet in most of their videos, so on and so forth.
You know, when you think of the kind of basketball of it all, who has Michael Jordan? He's the big gun. That's Nike. As a matter of fact, they also have LeBron James. How do you compete with that, particularly when Adidas and even other brands are ahead of you in terms of the athletic stuff of it all?
Well, if you're Puma, you're not really trying to compete with Nike or Adidas right now. What Puma's trying to do is hopefully land the next mega athlete and hope that you can cause the tides to shift in your favor. That's really all they can do as a company. You're not going to come in as basically a fledgling sneaker company when it comes to professional sports and think that you're going to take on the megalith known as Nike. Michael Jordan is still a monster. He's as big a monster as he ever was almost 35 years after being given his own signature shoe. So, if you're Puma right now, you're trying to scout to see who's the next LeBron James, who's the next Michael Jordan. Hopefully, with Jay-Z as a mascot, we can reel him in.
The answer is to become the lifestyle brand, and there is no better, not only ambassador, but kind of director of that than Jay-Z.
Jay-Z is not going to be the director of anything. He's not going to be the director of anything. His job is just to add some hip-hop appeal. That's it, Max Kellerman. You think that they're going to be calling up Jay-Z and asking him what he thinks a sneaker should look like? They might do that initially, but after a while, his job is just going to be, okay, boy, go on, head on out there to St. John's University or Georgetown University or the University of Kentucky or Duke or North Carolina and go talk to that prospect for us. That's your job, boy. That's how they're going to be talking to Jay-Z.
I expect him to have an enormous impact in terms of which athletes want to be aligned with this brand, and therefore, I think that'll have a cyclical effect, Stephen a kind of feedback loop, which will, up business would be my prediction, and for Puma, and as a result, it gives them more money to spend on marketing and so on. I think it's an enormous move for Puma, and I think it'll have an effect that reverberates throughout the NBA in terms of which athletes go where, and I believe there's another.
Now, that point that you just made in regards to Puma possibly establishing a foothold in collegiate sports is a point that is actually of far more substance than in the pros, Max Kellerman, because that could actually be a much more cogent and pertinent after effect of signing Jay-Z than them being able to find the next LeBron James or Michael Jordan in the pros. If they could create a foothold in collegiate sports where they could establish certain universities that become Puma universities, like you have certain colleges or universities that are Nike universities or Reebok universities or Adidas universities, if they could make that type of leeway themselves in the collegiate world, that would definitely pay dividends for them that could result in billions of dollars in revenue.
Big buyer in the game.
I disagree with you. And I mean no disrespect to the great Jay-Z. If anybody can make something work, it's him.
Well, if anybody could get worked, it's him. Because Jay-Z is basically probably the most affluent male prostitute on planet Earth. And people might not like me saying that, especially Jay-Z idolaters. But that basically is what he is. He has financial backers that tell him, we're going to create this organization and we want you to act as a front owner or a front CEO for this organization, because Jay-Z is not really running most of these companies. There are Jewish backers that want him to act as a front man and a pitch man, and they say, we'll give you a cut, but we can't let anybody know that you're not the real owner. That's how this is working, brothers. And certain people might not like that. It is what it is.
But I think that a connection like this with Puma and Jay-Z is going to be more relevant and pertinent in the hip-hop industry than it is in basketball. And here's what I mean. If we look at it, I'm reading a story right now. It's talking about how Adidas is putting way more stock into its celebrity partnerships with folks like Kanye and Pharrell. Nike is beefing up its partnerships with fashion designers like Kim Jones or Virgil Abloh or whatever his name is. You got guys like that. You get Jay-Z, you've got Meek Mill, Rihanna, and others. Yep. You understand? And
let me say this very quickly, since he mentioned Jay-Z in concert with Meek Mill and Rihanna. This is why I call Jay-Z probably the most affluent male whore, male prostitute on the earth. Brothers, all of these so-called musical entertainers, they're nothing but prostitutes. They get hired out to act as sex slaves to affluent billionaires across the planet. Like, there are certain websites that'll talk about a Rihanna and they'll say, oh, Rihanna's doing it big. She only dates billionaires. She's not dating anyone. These Arab and African billionaires, they flip through their dossier of the biggest new singers and they say, I want her, or I want her. And they can rent that person for 2 or 3 months at a time. They'll lavish them with diamonds and other things like cars, clothes, jewelry, etc. And that person basically becomes their sex slave for 3 or 4 months. A Rita Ora or a Janet Jackson, like she was allegedly just married to an Arab billionaire. Oh, that's bullshit. Rihanna dating an Arab billionaire. Now she's supposedly with an African billionaire. Billionaires don't date anybody. They hire you. And that's it. There's stories of Jay-Z telling Rihanna, if you want that beat from that producer, you know what you have to do. Go have sex with him. That's the same thing that allegedly he tells Rita Ora when she wants a certain beat for her album. Most of these females in the entertainment industry are nothing but prostitutes. That's all they are. And Jay-Z is a male prostitute, allegedly.
And I get where you're coming from.
So
you look
Gomez,
exactly. So he's got that, and connecting Puma with that is going to be helpful and elevate their level of relevancy. But when you talk about success in the basketball world, where's the template for that? What are we talking about here? You signed Walt Clyde Frazier, who I love dearly. Yep. Walt Clyde Frazier. You signed him to a lifetime deal the other day. Nothing but profound respect for this man who still announces games for the Knicks. I've known him for years. Good man, great player, last person to deliver a championship to the city of New York. That was 1973.
No, you know why he did that, because the Clydes are the iconic shoes.
I understand that. The Clydes are the iconic shoes. I totally get that. But what I'm talking about is when we talk about what resonates in today's generation, what's the first thing we bring up? The targeted demographic. And when you have a targeted demographic that isn't relatable to the brand, to the kind of individuals you're trying to connect yourself to, that could end up being problematic. All I'm saying is...
Well, Stephen A. Smith, that's the point of signing Jay-Z. You have to understand the reason why Puma will throw money at Jay-Z is because he's most likely the main name in the hip-hop world that is known across the globe. If you were to ask the official CEO or one of the chairmen of the boards that operates Puma, if you were to ask that person, who's a rapper that you think we can hire in order to try to promote our brand to the youth in America, who oftentimes are the main and prime movers in creating and monetizing the sports world, you say Jay-Z because that's all they know. They don't know Kendrick Lamar and these other rappers, NBA Youngboy and all these dudes out here. They know Jay-Z. That's why I say Jay-Z is the most affluent male prostitute on the planet, allegedly. But that's what he is. And they're going to try to use him to hopefully tap into that 18 to 35-year-old demographic that Stephen A. Smith is alluding to. Now, how successful he's going to be, we're going to find out. But I'm sure that what Jay-Z will do to put in his brick, to do his part in trying to improve relations between Puma and that young demographic of so-called black males that are so important in establishing pop culture across the earth, he's going to try to trickle down the promotion of the Puma brand to many of his younger artists, whether it be in their music videos or what have you, at concerts, etc. That's what he's going to do, because even Jay-Z knows he does not have the hold over the kids today like he did 20 years ago or 15 years ago. That's just natural. That's a part of life. The generations move forward.
The thing is that if anybody can make something work, it's Jay-Z, and I understand that. But in the world of basketball, particularly the DeAndre Aytons of the world, the Marvin Bagleys of the world, and others, you're talking about 7-footers, guys 6'10", 7 feet. The sneakers you wear matter. They're very, very particular. And you got to be very, very careful with what sneakers you wear in terms of your health. When you're big, you're usually a little bit awkward. Obviously, there's more weight, more mass on your body. You have to deal with that more delicately.
Well, Stephen A. Smith, here's the issue with what you're stating. Number one, if Puma throws enough money at some of these young cats coming out of college, they will wear that shoe. It doesn't matter how uncomfortable the shoe is. And if Puma is on point, what they'll do is they will develop a shoe with those young and incumbent NBA players, and they'll even say, find the most comfortable shoe that you wore in college, and we'll make a Puma version of it based off of the specs of that shoe. And that's how business is handled, Stephen A. Smith. It's not that difficult. But when you're trying to establish a foothold in the sports world, you're going to work with your commodities, that being these young NBA athletes. You're going to work with them because you have to work with them to make the business plan come to fruition. Bottom line.
And those guys are incredibly particular about what they wear.
Well,
and I think in the world, hold on, Max.
Let's talk about branding.
In the world of basketball, I think that's problematic. I have no doubt that Jay-Z...
Well, the bigger problem is that big men normally don't sell shoes. That's the bigger problem of it. Whether it was Shaq or Patrick Ewing or David Robinson, oftentimes centers have a problem moving units when it comes to shoe sales. When you think of the most affluent shoes, it's normally guards 6'1" to 6'6". It's very rare that centers are able to move units in regards to basketball shoes.
He will be successful with Puma. I'm just talking about for the purposes of the sport of basketball.
About the shoe,
I'm not sure about that.
The actual shoe for the player.
Well, I think that ultimately when you talk about what's going to get, what kind of clientele he's going to get, that's why we're having this conversation.
Look, here, let's start with the Clyde thing, right? Okay. Puma is a heritage brand. It's not just some upstart.
Puma is a Nazi brand. That's what they are, Max Kellerman, as is Adidas.
Oh, now we're trying to get... They're a heritage brand. So the first thing Jay-Z is doing is trading on their history. And Clyde Frazier, not only a champion, but back then was the essence of cool. So he's branding that this is a heritage brand. We have a history.
Yes, their heritage is that their founders were Nazis. Both Puma and Adidas, their founders were Nazis. Don't take my word for it. Please look it up. Rudolf Dassler founded Puma, and his younger brother Adolf Dassler founded Adidas, and they were both associated with the Nazi Party.
And we were the cool ones. That's what you do first to establish your identity. As time goes on, I'm quite sure there will be others who follow. Once that is established, or that has been established, that will innovate. But before he's innovating, it seems to me pretty clearly, he's establishing that they are a heritage brand in an excellent way, in my opinion. Eventually, if they innovate and really want to make inroads into the kind of athletic world, they will have to absolutely, Stephen A., design sneakers. But those things are more or less the same. All the companies have sneakers, depending on how your foot is shaped, that are better or worse for you. The technology is all good. It's like a new car nowadays, Stephen A. There's no such thing as a bad one.
I agree with everything that you're saying right now, Max Kellerman. I have to give you credit. You're talking sense, unlike Stephen A. Smith, for the most part. Even though one thing that I will agree with Stephen A. on is I think there's going to be an issue with Jay-Z being able to establish as strong a rapport with many of the youth, that core demographic. Is going to be far more difficult than Puma understands. But I think that that issue is going to be alleviated or solved, per se, by Jay-Z reaching out to many of the younger artists that are associated with him or on his label to try to connect with the youth in that way. And also, he's going to have to be able to reach out to many of the younger, more prominent athletes across the country, especially in high school and college, so that they can gain a greater foothold in the athletic world, because that's truly what this partnership is supposed to be all about. In regards to the shoe fit and how feasible it's going to be for many of these prospective athletes who are big men, once again, if you're Puma, the intelligent thing to do is to ask a DeAndre Ayton or a Bagley or whoever you're going to be working with to bring the most comfortable shoe that you currently wear in college, and we're going to make a Puma version for you, and you tell us how comfortable it is for you. Problem solved.
Just depends on if it fits your foot. I'm quite sure if Jay-Z wants to go in that direction, they'll come up with a perfectly good basketball sneaker. And I'm also quite sure that if he's in charge, it's going to look good and be branded properly.
Well, listen. Puma and Adidas are siblings, for crying out loud, okay?
Literally.
So we understand that there's a partnership that's there. Nobody's ignoring that. And again, I don't think that Jay-Z is going to fail, because I don't view him as somebody who fails. I just view him as a winner.
Well, Jay-Z's not allowed to fail. Believe me, Stephen A. Smith, if his backers and sponsors wanted him to fail, you'd never hear from him again.
But the flip side to this is, as it pertains to the sport of basketball, how Nike has entrenched itself, and Adidas as well. I'm talking about the Adidas brand, even though they're brothers with Puma. In the end, what it comes down to is that even though Puma has been around for a long time, they hadn't had anybody since Vince Carter in 1998. And you're talking 20 years ago. So I'm just thinking along the lines of, you know what, you're way back. I understand that there's something new here, or something old being revisited.
And to be quite frank with you, that's another thing that Nike's known for, is poaching athletes from many of these other sneaker companies. They'll actually allow Adidas to sign a Kobe Bryant. They'll allow a Puma to sign a Vince Carter. And when those athletes get to a great enough prominence, Nike will just come by with a blank check and say, hey, whatever you want, we're going to give you.
It per se, I just don't see what Max sees in that regard. I don't see that in the shoe department. But in a world of hip hop and beyond, I definitely think that Jay-Z's gonna make Puma.
Stephen A., you thinking about copping a pair of Pumas? You thinking about copping a pair?
All right, I got a ton of Clydes in my closet. All right, I got suedes, I got all of it. Let me say this, because I'm a sneakerhead.
That's right.
And I love this. And we know...
Well, you're an airhead, too.
We know he's
Right,
connected to the culture, as you just said, and obviously they already have Rihanna.
People come in with that saying, the culture. When people say the culture, you know what they're talking about? They're talking about the pop culture that's created by so-called black people, where they can feel cool but not have to deal with a lot of the afflictions that so-called black people have to deal with. Some of them self-caused, some of them imposed upon us. But that's what the term culture means. The first time I remember hearing somebody use that term was when Jay-Z used it on H to the Izzo. When he said, I do this for the culture, to let them know what a nigga look like when a nigga in a... That's the first time I remember hearing that term, the culture. But it's in reference to hip-hop culture, which basically allows people from other races to feel cool.
Gray on blue, those gray on blue suede Pumas with the fat gray laces back in the day. That's before your time, Mal.
No, but Rihanna's got a line, got the Fenty line. We mentioned Selena Gomez, Big Sean, all that.
Yeah, Rihanna's got a line. She's got a line with Puma. She's got a line of Coke in front of her, allegedly.
So obviously they're connected to the culture, that whole space. But I think Jay-Z is so intelligent and strategic, and look what he's done in the sports space, and so connected that the fact that
These people are so funny. Jay-Z is so intelligent, and he's so shrewd and crafty. Jay-Z has these opportunities presented to him. The brother has these opportunities presented to him. I'm not saying that he's a dumb guy, but you can't make these connections unless these connections are presented to you. They know that Jay-Z is a Kabbalistic brother. He is a venerator of Asar, of Baal, of Saturn, whatever you want to call him. That's why these opportunities are presented to him. Bottom line.
They already got Ayton and Bagley, potential top 5 picks, is major over a Nike or an Adidas.
Well, Molly Karam, it's only major if both Ayton and Bagley perform at a high level once they touch down in the NBA. That's it. So Puma has a lot riding on how well both of those young brothers impact the NBA.
That is a sign of great things to come.
Not necessarily, Molly, and here's why. Because money isn't guaranteed in the sneaker business the way that it used to be. You know, it's guaranteed when you're on the court of play, but if you get injured, not necessarily so, which ultimately elevates the level of caution on the part of those athletes who want to make sure that they don't find themselves getting injured or things of that nature. Plus, you bring up the artists. Well, remember, they style and profile. Look at them at All-Star Weekend and beyond, or, you know, walking into the arena or something like that. In the case of these guys, you're talking about guys that are going to be looking for something to play in. That's entirely different. Now, if you sat up there and you said, I'm making a deal with Russell Westbrook because he's going to fly to Paris for the fashion show, fashion week or whatever.
And that's actually a better point, Stephen A. Smith. To be quite honest with you, when you watch most of these NBA players dress, they don't really dress in a hip-hop style anymore. It's not 2001 with Allen Iverson coming in with do-rags on and baggy jeans hanging off his ass and t-shirts that's 5XL and all that other shit. These cats right now are more concerned with what's going on in Italy and in France than they are dressing like dudes from the hood. So I really don't see how this association with hip-hop is going to be so impactful.
And you want to watch him walking into the games and seeing what his attire is, that would be something different. But that's not what we're talking about here with Jay-Z.
Is the basketball space
I'm saying I don't think that guys will gravitate towards using Puma to play basketball in. I hope I'm wrong because I never root against my man Jay-Z. I'm hoping I'm wrong, but I don't suspect. I think that he's going to be successful with the artist. I'm not sure he's going to pull it off with basketball.
Depends on if they have a sneaker that they like. Stephen A., I agree with you. It depends. The bottom line is they got to have a product that people like to actually wear on the court. The thing that Jay-Z brings...
That wouldn't be a problem, though. Once again, all Puma has to do is have any of those athletes bring them the shoe that they're currently playing in, and they can model the Puma shoe off of that. It happens all the time. Do I think that it's going to be successful? No, I don't. In the long run, no, I don't. They're going to have to find a transcendent athlete that they can utilize in a great marketing campaign. And that's very difficult to do.
Brings is now the possibility, like the consideration of that brand.
Well, you
now
taking
people
a step
will be
back
open,
with Jay-Z.
players will be open to thinking about it, and in the past maybe they wouldn't have been.
You don't take a back step with Jay-Z. It's only a step forward. It's either stagnancy or you're moving forward. You're not going to take a step back with Jay-Z because he's a winner.
Yeah, I'm confident. I think Puma's coming, but we shall see out.
But anyway, I won't necessarily agree with the assertion that you don't take a step back with Jay-Z. I think that once many of these major sponsors are done with him and they see that he's not really making the money they thought, they just fire him. So peace.